Let me start with a statement that is going to make some people uncomfortable. Aquarius is not the rebel of the zodiac. It is the lawmaker. It is not the sign of chaos. It is the sign of systems. And if you believe Aquarius is about unlimited freedom, there is a very high chance that you have misunderstood what freedom actually requires. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you might see ancient Rome, the United States Constitution, and even your own ideas about liberty in a completely different way. For years, modern astrology has marketed Aquarius as the eccentric outsider, the rule breaker, the one who refuses authority, the humanitarian who does not follow tradition. It sounds attractive. It sounds progressive. It sounds powerful. But here's the question no one asks. If Aquarius hates rules so much, why was it originally ruled by Saturn? Before the discovery of Uranus in 1781, Aquarius belonged to Saturn. And Saturn is not wild. Saturn is not chaotic. Saturn is not impulsive. Saturn is discipline. Saturn is consequence. Saturn is structure. Saturn is law. Saturn is time, responsibility, order, and institutions that outlast individuals. That alone should force us to rethink the stereotype. Because the planet most associated with boundaries and authority governed the sign we now call rebellious. Something is off. Aquarius is a fixed air sign. Air represents ideas, principles, social contracts, communication, shared thought. Fixed means stable, anchored, structured, hardened into form. Aquarius does not simply imagine a new idea. It stabilizes the idea. It systematizes the idea. It turns belief into policy. It turns philosophy into legislation. That is not random rebellion. That is structural engineering. And this is the moment where the popular image begins to collapse. Aquarius does not hate systems. Aquarius hates broken systems. That difference changes everything. Aries challenges rules because it feels restricted. Sagittarius challenges rules because it believes in a higher moral vision. Aquarius challenges rules because they are outdated, inconsistent, or unfair to the collective. Aquarius asks one persistent question. Does this system serve everyone fairly? If the answer is no, Aquarius does not just protest. It redesigns. And if you want to understand that energy on a civilizational level instead of a personality meme level, you have to look at ancient Rome. Not the dramatic Rome of gladiators and emperors. The legal Rome. The bureaucratic Rome. The Rome that built an empire not through emotional unity, but through codified law. In 451 before the Common Era, Roman citizens demanded that their laws be written down and displayed publicly. Before that moment, legal interpretations were often controlled by elites and applied inconsistently. The plebeians said enough. Write the laws. Standardize them. Make them visible to everyone. The result was the 12 tables. It was not glamorous. It was not poetic. It was procedural. Property rights. Debt law. Family structure. Civil disputes. And here's why it matters. Power moved from private interpretation to public structure. The law became larger than the individual enforcing it. That is Aquarian thinking. Not freedom from rules. Freedom protected by rules. This is where we have to confront a difficult truth. Most people confuse freedom with the absence of restriction. But imagine a world with no agreed standards. No enforcement. No boundaries. No contracts. Is that freedom? Or is that the law of the strongest? Without structure, power becomes personal. Without law, dominance wins. Rome understood something essential. Law protects the weak from arbitrary authority. Law stabilizes society beyond personality. That is Saturn. That is Aquarius. The Roman Republic was not designed around a king. In fact, Rome overthrew its monarchy because it feared concentrated power. Instead, it created offices. Consuls with limited terms. Senators who debated. Magistrates constrained by written law. Authority was fragmented deliberately, not because Rome rejected strength, because Rome did not trust unlimited strength. Now think about the United States. The founders feared monarchy. They feared tyranny. They feared one individual becoming the state. So they wrote a constitution. They divided power into branches. They created checks and balances. They embedded limitation into leadership. The president is powerful, but not above the Constitution. Congress holds authority, but it is restricted. The Supreme Court interprets, but it does not command armies. System over personality. Framework over ego. That is Aquarian archetype operating at national scale. Here is the moment that might spark debate. If you are American, you live inside an Aquarian experiment. The entire structure of American governance is built on the belief that law must be higher than any individual. Freedom must be codified. Power must be limited. Authority must be accountable. Aquarius is not anti-authority. It is anti-arbitrary authority. It does not reject structure. It refines structure. That distinction is everything. Now let us talk about Uranus, because modern astrology often points to Uranus as Aquarius ruler. Uranus represents disruption, shock, innovation, revolution. Yes, Aquarius carries innovative energy. But innovation without structure collapses. Revolution without redesign creates chaos. Lightning is dramatic. Wiring is sustainable. The American Revolution did not endure because it rebelled. It endured because it built a constitutional framework afterward. Saturn determines whether change survives time. Aquarius is intellect disciplined by Saturn. Vision stabilized by structure. That is why Aquarius is fixed. It does not scatter its energy. It commits to principles. But every archetype has a shadow. When Aquarius is distorted, it does not become wild. It becomes rigid, cold, bureaucratic, law without compassion, system without humanity. Rome eventually suffered from overextension and administrative heaviness. Institutions hardened. Authority calcified. Saturn can build. Saturn can also suffocate. Aquarius amplifies structure. If the structure is just, it protects. If the structure is flawed, it institutionalizes harm. That is why this archetype is powerful. It scales whatever it touches. Now bring this closer to home. Have you ever been frustrated not because a rule exists, but because it is applied inconsistently? Have you ever believed that transparency matters more than charisma? Have you ever argued that power should be limited by principle? That is Aquarian thought. It is not emotional rebellion. It is systemic fairness. Leo, the opposite sign of Aquarius, represents the individual center, the leader, the spotlight, the heart. Aquarius represents the network, the grid, the collective pattern. Rome distrusted kings. America limits presidents. That is archetypal tension. And here is where the discussion becomes urgent. We live in a time when institutions are questioned globally. Constitutions are debated. Trust in systems is fragile. Arguments rage about executive power, judicial interpretation, civil rights, digital privacy. Underneath all of it is a structural question. What kind of system sustains liberty in a modern world? That is Aquarian territory. It is not asking whether we should have rules. It is asking which rules protect the most people fairly. That is redesign, not destruction. Redesign requires patience. It requires discipline. It requires responsibility. Rome's legal concepts outlived Rome. Contracts, civil procedure, property law influenced Europe for centuries. Empires fall. Systems endure. That is Aquarian longevity. Now let me challenge you directly. Imagine waking up tomorrow and every rule is gone. No courts. No contracts. No enforcement. No shared standards. Is that freedom? Or is that instability? True liberty is delicate. It survives only when protected by structure. Too much structure suffocates it. Too little structure destroys it. Aquarius stands in that balance. It does not worship law blindly. It refines it. It does not glorify chaos. It engineers order. Engineering order is harder than tearing something down. Anyone can destroy. Few can design. That is why Aquarius is misunderstood. It is not the teenager slamming the door. It is the architect drafting the blueprint. It is the reformer writing amendments. It is the citizen demanding that authority justify itself. And here is the final thought I want to leave with you. Freedom is not the absence of boundaries. It is the presence of just boundaries. When law is transparent, fair, and consistently applied, individuality flourishes. When law is arbitrary, freedom shrinks. Aquarius seeks consistency at scale. It asks whether the structure holds everyone equally. That is not rebellion. That is civilization. If this shifted your understanding of Aquarius, or even your understanding of freedom, share it with someone who still believes astrology is only about personality traits. And I want to know what you think. Does freedom require more structure, or less? Write your answer in the comments. These conversations matter, and I read them. If you appreciate deep discussions that connect archetypes, history, and the systems shaping our world, press like so this reaches more people ready for depth. And subscribe if you want more explorations that go beyond stereotypes and into the architecture of power and civilization. Because the zodiac is not about labels. It is about patterns strong enough to build empires. And we are only beginning to explore them.